In the winter of 2007, as he waited for the subway with his two young daughters, Wesley Autre watched as a stranger collapsed on the platform and then stumbled onto the tracks of an oncoming train. Autre is quoted in the New York Times as saying, "I had to make a split-second decision." And that decision was to leap onto the tracks in order to hold his fellow traveler, who was having a seizure, as close to the ground as possible. The story ends the way many such stories do, with the hero in question challenging the very premise of the story. Autre said, "I don't feel like I did something spectacular. I just saw someone who needed help. I did what I felt was right." When I hear stories like this, I'm struck with feelings of admiration and amazement, but I'm also struck by the question of what I would have done in similar circumstances, and by the question of what that says about me. Received wisdom tells us that character is the result of 1,000 small everyday decisions, and that such character is often only revealed when it's tested. Research in philosophy and the empirical sciences has complicated this picture over the past few decades, suggesting, for instance, that deep traits of character only play one part in the complex explanation of why we do what we do in particular situations. But the underlying common sense picture has remained more or less intact. Individual actions lead to habits that determine patterns of behavior, and this is a process that we can exert more or less control over. Because we've got a fairly good sense of what actions count as good and what traits count as virtuous, this means one of the most important elements in living a good life consists in identifying and implementing habitually virtuous courses of action. One thing that's become clear over the past few decades is that habitual behavior can systematically influence the wiring of our brains. This is, of course, encouraging in a number of ways. It means that we're not locked into the habits that we currently find ourselves with. And it means that deep change is even neurologically possible. On the other hand, the so-called plasticity of the brain and neural networks can also be co-opted to make us continually eat junk food or to keep scrolling through social media feeds long after the activity has lost any of its appeal. One big question, then, that we have to ask ourselves in determining how to live a good life is how we plan to improve our character. If you hope to become heroic and courageous, like Autre, what sorts of habits do you need to be developing right now?